Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, the internet's busiest music nerd. And it's time for a review of the new YC The Cynic album, GNK.
YC The Cynic, going on a picnic. YC, I am IC.
Hey, I am doing a review. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know the gibber that's coming out of your mouth right now, but it makes me want to throw up. Shut up. Shut up and go away.
I get reps too. You don't just gotta review other reps.
Interrupter Jones. All right. YC The Cynic is a... He's a Bronx rapper. He's a few projects deep right now. He's put out some mixtapes in the past, but this is his first full-length album, which I believe he's trying to sell. I have heard verses from him in the past. He was featured on that Hot Sugar EP that was dropped last year, but he really made a lasting impression on me earlier this year when I heard him drop a verse onto that Milo mixtape, Cavalcade. You know he doesn't just rap with anybody, and vice versa. You gotta be able to step to Milo lyrically and philosophically, and YC brings plenty of that on this new album of his. GNK is a little bit of a concept album dealing with race, religion and God, power and ego, topics that have been touched down upon multiple times in hip-hop music, but rarely does it come off as focused and as well thought out and as well produced as what I'm hearing here. The beats on this project are done by Frank Drake, a producer who I'm not particularly familiar with, but I do think working with him track for track has resulted in a great project. It seems like by working with one dude, every twist and turn YC is able to make, topically and philosophically, Frank Drake is there to accompany it with a very well-fitting instrumental. Like the track The Pox, which is the first full-length song on this album, and with the very drum-heavy verses on this track and just the space around these rhythms with YC flowing over these beats really well, it kind of feels like the start of something. It's really cinematic. It's like a gathering. A sermon is beginning. And the really grainy keyboard keys that kind of feel like they were played out on a Mellotron or something like that, they sound gorgeous and just kiss the intro of this track and the hook really well with the run as fast as you can. And this track fits into the overall theme of this album in numerous ways. Tupac Shakur kind of being revered as a hip-hop god, fitting in with that god theme, and the Pox also kind of sounds like the Pox, which is an interesting play on words. And the song Heavenly, I love the instrumental here as well, with the soulful vocal sampling and the very jazzy horns. It's a very beautiful, uplifting instrumental, and YC comes through with an uplifting message lyrically as well, trying to get the listener to think more of themselves and think more directly about their relation to God. However, even though this seems like a good thing on this track, there is sort of a dark side to the mentions of God and religion on this album. They come through the strongest on the song God Complex, a track that is kind of a surprise for YC The Cynic because he sings on this song from back to front, with a vocal melody that kind of sounds like Suzanne Vega's Tom's Diner, which is pretty interesting considering that song was sampled on the Milo mixtape that YC appeared on earlier this year. I'm just sort of imagining Milo and YC like jamming some Suzanne Vega or something. YC's vocal melody does get a little repetitive throughout the song, and it becomes pretty apparent pretty fast that he isn't the greatest singer in the world, but he does hold his own. He doesn't really sing outside of his vocal range on this track, and it's really the lyrics that kind of wow and keep this song engaging. YC talking about how godly he is and using his powers to strike fear in people because he kind of needs people to worship him in order to feel good about himself. In the lyrics, he says he'll part the widest ocean and bust the world wide open, and with the instrumental in the background, just with these plucked, beautiful strings being played, it just has this really dramatic, theatrical element to it that is really fitting. This same kind of mentality and portrayal runs through other tracks on here too, like Molotovs at POSEIDON or Power Trip, except these songs go a little bit harder, have some more aggressive instrumentals, and you really hear YC rap on these tracks, especially at the start of Molotovs at POSEIDON, which, I mean, it's not a deep set of lyrics that kick this track off, but you just gotta kind of imagine what he's saying at the beginning of this song. It's some interesting and powerful imagery of him being godlike, and you're shooting at Zeus. You know, I'm cutting through my noose, I'm pulling up my roots. Every bar is like this large, powerful, grandiose gesture that, if you think about it actually being a reality, it's pretty scary that someone would be that. But you do have moments on here, like on the track Power Trip, where YC kind of puts his godlike image into a fetal position, sort of portraying that there are some chinks in this armor. This more vulnerable side of YC is also on display on tracks like The Heaviest Cross, where he kind of directly addresses the fact that he's a musician and he has his issues just like any musician does, putting themselves out there when dealing with people that don't like their music, whether it be through hateful comments or sort of very critical blog reviews. He kind of just comes to the conclusion that this, because of his line of work, is his cross to bear, it's his issue to deal with. And then after this, he quickly moves on to his mother having her own cross to bear, raising kids, getting her master's, so on and so forth. The closing track on here, Being God, sort of breaks that fourth wall again and addresses the listener directly, either thanking them for listening or asking them to kind of take part in spreading the word on this music. He again kind of displays a bit of weakness by saying that he feels threatened because he's a free, open thinker, and that's kind of a dangerous thing for someone to be. While I do think it is a really personal and introspective finish to the album, I guess my issue is that I didn't really see this song pulling the whole concept of this album together into kind of a nice, tight little package. That's really my biggest letdown with this LP though. Even though YC doesn't meticulously assemble this album together into this flawlessly segued concept album, it doesn't necessarily mean that the songs themselves are bad. Actually, a majority of them are great. The only shortcoming on some of the tracks here, I think, are the hooks. YC may be a god, but I think hooks sometimes are kind of his kryptonite. Either they don't add to the song in a way that's all that meaningful, or at least meaningful in an obvious way, kind of like on the song Murphy's Law, which I think the hook only really makes sense after the second verse when he's kind of talking about de-evolution of the mind. Because on the hook he's essentially saying, fuck bitches, get money. I think the only hook on here that I really disliked was the chorus on Know-It-Alls. Not necessarily because it didn't make sense to me, but YC's singing on this track is incredibly off pitch and not really in a cute or interesting way. It just really kind of killed the hook here for me. Still, lyrically, it is a very interesting song that plays into YC's relationship, I think, his relationship with God. And when you dive into this album overall, even though I feel like it doesn't all tie together in a very clean way, it does portray this really deep and personal back and forth struggle with these issues that this album addresses, like I said earlier: God, power, ego, race, the last of which is specifically addressed on the track The N-Word. All I know is this sort of mental wrestling match is really interesting, blow for blow. So as far as his lyrics go, I find YC to be a really fascinating dude. Vocally, I think he does have some personality. He's got a bit of a speech impediment that comes through on his vocals a bit, but he seems to sidestep it sometimes. It doesn't ruin his verses or make them difficult to listen to. In my opinion, it adds character. And as far as his flows go, he changes them up. He has a good command of flow. I wouldn't say he goes ultra fast a lot of the time. Really, he's kind of keeping it at a mid-pace to focus on delivering a message in the lyrics. I'm feeling a decent strong 8 on this album. Turn. So yes, I am heavily endorsing this YC The Cynic album right now. Definitely check this thing out if you're into artists like A Tribe Called Quest, KRS-One, Mos Def, Del the Funky Homo Sapien. This review is my opinion. Only the strong subscribe. All mistakes were intentional. Magic, happy magic. Love you. YC The Cynic, GNK forever.